Hey, my friends, before we begin today, I want to slow everything down wherever you are listening on a trail, in your car, or standing in the kitchen. I want to invite you into this moment with us. You don't have to hold it together, you don't have to rush, and you don't have to pretend you're fine. Just be here with us right now, exactly as you are. Today's conversation is tender and it's honest. And if you're carrying your own version of grief, or uncertainty, I want you to feel included, not listening from the outside of your life. This is a conversation about love, about loss, about the dark nights that reshape us, and the small moments where light begins to return.
Mm.
And it's a conversation about what it really means to move forward, not move on. And my guest today is Josh Coleman, a writer, an ultramarathon runner, and a grief advocate who lost his wife, Erin. After 20 years together, he found himself navigating a life he never expected. His book, Moving Forward, Running with Grief, challenges the idea that healing doesn't mean forgetting.
Mm.
Instead, Josh shows what it looks like to carry love forward while rebuilding a meaningful life. And as we step into this conversation, my friends, let's pause for a moment, take one breath. And with that, please welcome Josh Coleman. Hey, Josh, thank you for being here with us.
Yes, thank you, Wendy. It's so good to be with you and be on your podcast, and definitely looking forward to this conversation.
Well, I'm really glad because before we go anywhere, I want to step into this slowly because this is a conversation we don't want to rush and we
Yeah,
want to breathe through this, especially with the presence and the care and the respect for about what we're ready to hold here, honestly. So Josh, speak to the person listening as if they're sitting right here with us. How are
yeah,
you arriving with us today?
yeah. I'm here to speak obviously about my grief journey. It's been almost 3.5 years since Erin's passing, and I just want to come to a place where, I think the biggest thing for me is, kind of stop with I call it positive toxicity. It's like this, oh, things will be better, or things, learn to move on, or, all these things we hear. And I just think it's toxic to say those things. I understand why we say these things, but I think it's because they're kind of what I'll call like cliche things we say to each other, like when we hear about losing people. And I think, a lot of that comes from because we want to help. And I do talk about that a little bit in the book. One of the guys I mentioned, Jonathan, he talks about, people just want to help and they want to say something to try to comfort you because they feel your pain. And I want to kind of start trying to steer people away from that, and go into having, like, let grief have its space. Grief needs to have its space, and there's no time limit, there's no time, but there is points where you have to start deciding when you're going to move forward.
Agreed. So, Josh, before we go any deeper, there's something I'd like or actually love for you to share with the person
Yeah.
who's listening right now. Can you tell them how our paths crossed and how this
Yes.
conversation
Yeah.
came to be?
It's yeah,
I,
absolutely.
yeah.
I'm all about serendipity. I always try, maybe I try too hard sometimes to find serendipitous moments. And we met each other up on the escarpment at Western States this past summer, and we were both up there, I believe, around 4:30 in the morning. I think I was up there, like, I think we were the top probably 20, 30 people up there.
Yep.
Of course, I feel like I'm running racing that day, and I'm passing people on my way up to try to get up there to get to a good spot. And I think we both perched up right when you get over the escarpment when the runners start coming down. And it was such an epic spot. And I know Jeff Pelletier was up there as well. And yeah, I don't know, we just got to talking, and I'm sure I probably had some coffee or something in me, and so I'm sure my mouth just started motoring. And I think I never give up an opportunity to share my story, and because it's all about, and a part of this book is, letting Erin's legacy continue on. And so I always, and obviously it's still part of my story and will always be a part of my story. And and part of it too is just I want to. It helps me grieve, and sharing our story and sharing, what happened to us. And so, but yes, it was a beautiful moment, and I'm glad we connected. And yeah, it's been amazing.
Well, if you're watching this, I will throw a little video up here because I think I have a video of us at the escarpment up
Oh,
there. You're watching this
oh,
on YouTube of this, so I'll throw that up there because that was
yeah,
such a joy to see the
yeah.
sunrise and get the view
Oh
of
my
Lake
gosh,
Tahoe and just participating and spectating all the runners coming up and
yes,
over. It was magical. And sometimes people's stories that we share and we take those opportunities and they just stick with you. And honestly,
yeah,
Josh, your heart just stuck with me ever since.
mm,
And all the runs and all the training I've been on, it's like you've kind of been there in the background. So I'm like, okay, I've got to reach out. And I
yeah,
had no idea about this book. So
yeah,
because I don't have a physical copy, all of my notes and summaries are on my phone. So
yeah.
if I'm looking
You
over
will get that
here,
physical copy hopefully soon.
it's because I got highlights and everything going on here. But
Yeah.
I just want to say what you wrote doesn't just tell a story, it really brings people into it. And I found myself being with you in every single room from the
Mm,
devastating hospital hallways
yeah,
down to the pen and planner on Erin's desk. I truly felt like I was with you in you and Erin's home. And it was so
yeah,
special for me. Like it was just like I was always there inside the theaters, all the way to the wide open forest covered trail runs. I mean, the level of detail that you share is so real and so true. And it's honestly what I feel like grief actually looks like. It's just the small things most people never know how to say out loud and quietly kind of like they're surviving through the day. And I
yeah,
want to honor that because the way you wrote it creates so much depth and honesty that people don't always have the language for.
yeah.
So, with that, I want to take us back to where the book begins because it gives the listener a foundation for everything we're about ready to walk through.
Hmm.
And you open that night with everything, and I remember when I first read those first words on the page, and the night where so the book begins with this night, though your world split open, the call, the drive, the waiting room. I was just like shattered already. I was like, can you take us back to that moment? And
Yeah,
as you do, speak to the person who knows exactly what it feels like to be divided into the before and the after.
yeah. I think there's this moment that splits, and wow. Thank you for those words. So to start off, I wanted to start off with the book because obviously you want to capture the audience, and I wanted to get into those what I'll call very raw moments. You know, so she was 5 days out from starring in a show called Course Line as the lead, Cassie, and that day was normal. And for us, we were in the process of getting a cat, which I talk about, or kitten in the
Yes,
book. And
yes.
so she had left for the theater that afternoon and was going to be a night rehearsal. And yeah, and so she texted me she was on her way home, and then it's like 45 minutes later, and I'm like, she should be home, and I start calling her, and I don't text her because I want her to answer. And you don't get an answer, and I called like three times, and I finally just said I got to go look for her. Something's there's something, you got to trust your intuition there, like something's not right. And so I just start driving, and there's like two different ways that she can come and get home. And so I take each one, and then literally right when I get to, like, there's no other way but to get back to the highway, I get the phone call. And I knew when I saw the number that, like, this is not going to be a good phone call.
Oh God. Yeah.
And yeah, so the lady, it's like, are you the spouse of Aaron Coleman? I said yes. And she's like, you need to get to the Gulf Coast Medical Center. And I'm like, well, what's going on? And she wouldn't tell me. And I knew that was not good. And then so I get to the highway, and it's about two exits down, and then I see all the flashing lights, and I see her car flipped over.
Wow. So
And
so
yeah,
heavy. I mean,
yeah,
just that moment.
I knew in that moment, like, wow, this is serious. And I just, in that moment, you just try to pray to God, like, just be okay.
Yeah.
And then, you get to the hospital and, they come and tell you what's going on. And yeah, I was just, and that's why I wanted to write that part first, because I wanted to get people right in that moment. Like, this is how raw and this is how emotional it was, when, like, your life has been turned upside down and you don't know that there's going to be necessarily a fatality. I knew she was still alive in that moment, but you don't know the totality of what the injuries are going to be until later on.
Josh, I so feel for you, even with my own losses that we've had to navigate ourselves. I
Yeah.
think this was the first. Gosh, you're making me cry now too.
We'll get through it.
Yeah, we're gonna get through it. We're gonna get through it together. This was the first book that actually helped me remind myself of the alternatives of just the regular ways to grieve. It's just like seems like you get the pamphlets and you kind of start searching for some answers out there and to keep myself focused,
Yeah.
I remember reading on I'm just gonna go to my notes here on page 1, you say, "Grief isn't something to fix. It's love with nowhere to go." When did that actually land for you? Because this wasn't
Yeah.
something you could solve, but you knew you had to feel.
Yeah. I mean, I knew early on, like it just, and that's, when I started thinking about writing this book, I reached out to my good friend Eric Kessler, who I used to work for, and he's the one that started this manuscripts company, which helps people self-publish and write this book, and he helped me capture that. And it was when I said the words, "It's not about moving on; it's about moving forward." Because you just don't move on from something like this, because moving on means you're moving off, and and, and you just don't move off from something. You have to learn to take the steps forward to move forward from this. And I knew that grief, and I think too, it made me feel that, like, that's when you truly know you love somebody, is when you lose them. I mean, I think you feel it as you're in a relationship with somebody, but like the totality of it, like, you don't really feel it, I believe, until that person's no longer physically there. And maybe people I don't have children, but maybe people feel that way about their children. That's when they truly understood what love meant. And it doesn't mean that you're not in love with somebody, you're not fully in love with somebody, like I was with Erin, and I'm sure you are with David. But when you lose that other half of you, as I'll call it, there's just, like, that's when I knew what love really felt like. And I knew the only path for me was to honor that love and to honor the grief and to move forward with the grief, and knowing that that's something that's always going to be with me the rest of my life. Like, it's not something that's just going to go away. Now, are there always going to be, like, horrible stinging days like it was early on when it stung really really bad? No, but there's days like even today we're talking about it and it still stings.
Yeah.
And that's okay, and you learn to move forward through that, and taking those steps. And sure, there's the stages of grief, and I talk about some of those stages of grief, and I believe those are true, but there's just not, it's not like year one, year two. Sure, there's first holidays, there's first birthdays, and those still sting. But every week of the accident, because the accident happened on the 11th, but she didn't pass till the 16th. And so it's always going to be, that week is always, I think, for me, going to be a hard week, and I'm okay with that. I'm gonna learn to move forward with that. And so that's just how I've had to view it. And I hope through these words that it'll help other people see it that way as well.
Josh, thank you for going back there because I want to pause for a second, not to move past what you just shared, but to honor the weight of it.
Yeah.
And if you're listening and if you felt your chest tighten out there or your breath shift, I mean, that is totally human
Yeah.
response to a moment that changes our lives. So before we continue, let's take a breath together.
Yes.
I know I sound crazy for doing that, but it's like the only way I can
You
like
have to.
reset myself.
I do that a lot. I do a lot of breath work.
Even if it's like a micro breath, you know?
Yeah, yeah. It's always a reset. We always need that reset.
So I wanna dive into you had talked about, just saying, like, the first what did the first mornings feel like when you woke up and Erin, wasn't there? Speak to the listener waking up to the same reality and wondering how the heck do they breathe right now?
Yeah, and I think I mentioned this in the book. I don't remember which chapter, but I remember, reaching over those first mornings, just thinking like, "Is this a is this a nightmare? Like,
Yeah.
is it real?" And it's like every morning, those first few weeks, I'm reaching over, and that's when the reality would hit. Because when you first wake up in the morning, you're just, okay, what's going on? Your brain kind of resets, and like, okay, start thinking about your day. You start thinking about these things, and it was like every morning, I'm reaching over to these cool sheets, and she's not there, and
It's so
it was so painful. It was just like the reality was just smacking you in the face each morning, and but I knew I couldn't escape it. I knew like that was my new reality. It was like I was never in this position where I was like, I'm not going to accept it. I'm not going to accept it. I mean, I accepted it very early on. I knew how real it was, but it was just still those reminders every morning. Those first few weeks when it just stung really, really bad, and you just felt so numb to it. And but yeah, you take those are the mornings and days where you're just taking a moment by moment. you know, it's like second by second, minute by minute, hour by hour, and those first few weeks and months.
totally agree, and I think let's take a second there because for anyone listening who knows those mornings or is living them right now, we just want you to know that, you're not alone
Yeah,
and it's okay, and let's move gently, Josh, into this
yeah,
next part of the conversation because I felt like Erin has been with me ever since I read your book and
yes,
even out on the trails, just from learning about who she is, her personality, what she likes, the things that she did for people, just how she showed up in the world. So it's like when I had this beautiful sunrise run last weekend, I felt like she was there with me. And I think I sent you a message. I was like, okay, Erin would absolutely love this dramatic, like super crazy sky right now. It looks like it's on fire.
yep,
And I sent you that message just because I just felt the way that you have brought her with us and continue. It shows so much. And I think that that is really special when you're going through a loss to not, like you say, forget it, just to move through it, move
yeah,
forward and take it on. And when I think about remembering Erin before we talk about healing, I want people to know, Erin, when you close your eyes, what is the first image that rises? Because I want you to describe it in a way that lets the listener feel her present. Because
yeah,
there's a moment in the book where I believe it was page 27, a memory of Erin that brings warmth instead of collapse. That first moment of even joy and grief that coexisted. Please share us what you see and tell us, describe Erin for us
yeah.
before you talk about that.
Oh gosh, I mean, I think the biggest thing was her smile. If we're talking about physical, like, I mean, I like her smile is ingrained in me for the rest of my life. Which is, she had such a beautiful smile, and radiant eyes, and yeah, I mean, she had a soft look. She didn't look her age. I mean, most people they see the picture of her, she's like she was 40 years old. It's funny. I remember she was like either late 20s or even early 30s, and she played Fiddler on the Roof. She played the middle daughter, who's I believe supposed to be around 16 or 17.
Wow, that's impressive.
I'm sorry if the girl that's listening that played the oldest daughter, she was only like 19 or 20 or something like that. And again, it was just the look she had. I mean, both of us, I don't think, have never looked our age.
Not at all.
Yeah, she just, she had this, people I think were gravitated to her, and she just had a warm smile, and but she was an introvert, so she was always about close, very have very intelligent conversations and very intense conversation. I'm the guy that we talk about extroverts. I'm the guy that's going around to everybody in the room. She's the one over in the corner having the very intimate, one or conversation with one or two people, and she just had this way of that I look back on that she just had a way to make people feel special and make people feel welcome, and and I just it's just something that if you didn't get to really know Erin, I almost feel bad that you never got to meet her in person. So that's what I'm trying to pull out in the book, who she was, and just I feel bad for people that never actually got to meet her. So that's why part of why I wanted to write the book is to pull that out, and so people understand who she truly is.
I love that. I feel like she's my long lost sister out there because I was like, That sounds like me."
Yeah, yeah. She was. It's like she did her work on this earth in the 40 years she was here. It's
For
like I
sure.
have to that's one of the silver lines I think about. We just never know when it's going to be our time, and I feel like she did her work. I feel like she made the impact definitely on me and many other people that met her, and including her mom and her brother, and my nieces and sister-in-law and my brother. She just I think the other word I was thinking of too is she just made these subtle impacts that you look
Yeah.
back later. You don't think about it in the moment, but then you think about later on, you're like, wow, she was so smart.
What I really loved about Erin is, the way she would stay late to help people at the theater that you shared. The way that she was always just relentless about perfecting herself, her roles, everything was so organized, and
Yep.
it was just such a blessing, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, she loved the theater. I mean,
It was her place.
that was her place, and she loved
It's where she could kind of create new characters and come to
it.
life.
Yeah, I mean, she had a stressful job. She loved her job. She worked for CEO of her company, and they were startup, and I mean, she loved her boss, and but theater was her place to, her hobby. That was her place to decompress. Maybe outside of shopping, but
Yeah.
like theater was her place, and she was always like if she wasn't the director, she was like the assistant director. She was helping people be in the right places and know their lines and where to stand. And yeah, and I get these stories back from her theater mates, and they're just so special. And
Yeah.
I know in that world, she made such an impact, and
She
she just loved it, and she wanted to do everything to make it the best show possible, even when it felt like it was going to fall apart. She was going to make sure, and I always heard that she always had a smile on her face, and she was always positive, even when things weren't going right. And they were 5 days out from maybe a show, and they all felt like maybe it was going to not come together. But it was always the magic of theater.
Josh, thank you for bringing Erin into the room with us. I think that's what I felt like I wanted to hear. I want our listeners to hear that. And I want to pause for a moment because
Yeah.
for you that's listening, if you're hearing Josh describe Erin and it's brought up somebody maybe for you or someone you love, just know that that's okay and that's part of being human. And she's still with us. She's still out there. She sees us. I feel like she's part of this right now. And
Oh yeah.
she's been a gift to so many,
Yeah.
of us, and you've spent the longest time with her, and so grateful for that. I want to go back to talking about joy and grief. That first moment where you had shared how that came together. Can you talk to the listener about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think there were several, but I remember, I think I talk about that, it was, 7 or 8 months later, and I'm sure I had laughs before that, but the joy wasn't truly there. And I think, there was a time where, I was in Montana, and, that after that first couple months, and I remember, I was out on the trails probably 8 months later, and I felt their presence, and I knew like it was going to be okay. And I needed to find my joy again, and I needed to find my passion again for who I am and who I truly am, and not just feel like I'm in this dark place. And not that it was like dark the whole time, and but there's these moments, and I know I needed to find my joy, and because I knew if I didn't, then that's not fair to her or to me. That I need to carry obviously her legacy forward, but I also need to bring my joy back and my joy forward,
Yes.
and be that because we're gonna laugh, we're gonna cry, and just like in this podcast,
Right.
and you're gonna have those moments. And I am a joyful person. I am a very optimistic person, and so that's why I wanted to pull this forward to let people know that like the joy is gonna come back. The joy is gonna be there. It's gonna come back. You're gonna laugh again, and yes, you're gonna feel like your world is over. You're gonna feel like you're like, how can I ever be the same? Well, you're not going to be the same, but you're going to get that joy back. You're going to get those moments back, and you're going to get the laughter back. And it's okay to laugh again. It's okay to have joy again. They would want that for you. And I think even for a person that maybe went through something even more tragic or even a sinister type situation, that like that person would want you to be happy. That person would want you to have joyful moments again. Their passing wasn't a a mark on you that you can never enjoy life again. It's, if anything, it's to celebrate life. And I'm sure we can talk about that as well. As we have to celebrate the people that we lose in our life, because they're worthy of that praise.
This ties right into, page 45. You write, "This wasn't about moving on, it was about letting light exist alongside the darkness." What has helped you hold both?
Yeah. Well, I mean, the light definitely. I mean, my faith. I never lost my faith. I've been a believer in God most of my life, and one thing I know, that in the darkness there will always be light. God created light. And we have that, and even if you know that's not something for you, it is for me. And I had to accept that even through the darkness there'll be light again. And I wanted to carry that forward, and knowing that like I'm going to be okay, and there's light on the other side of this dark feeling and this dark moment.
Great, totally agree with that, and if you're listening to this and know that you're gonna get through this too, and Josh, thank you for being willing to talk about that part of your journey, and before we move on, take a pause for a moment, because I feel loneliness and grief can still feel like a world of its own. And for anyone who's listening and you're in that place right now, you're not the only one.
Yeah.
Take a breath. You can shift with us together in this next part, because I want to talk about, Josh, you shared with a turning point in understanding grief when it came from, something Stephen Colbert once said, this idea that suffering and love are intertwined. It's a gift to have been broken open because it means you loved deeply. How did that land for you? And can you speak to the listener who's struggling to believe
Yeah.
that this pain is the proof of their love?
Yeah, I mean, it's a gift to exist, and with that existence comes suffering. And when you love somebody, like, that's when that like life is a gift. And we're privileged to be at this moment, at this time in life. And that just, when I read those words from him, and he spoke about that on a podcast with Anderson Cooper, who started a podcast on grief. And it just hit me like, wow. I mean, you have to be grateful for all of it, the suffering, the pain, like it's all the emotions, like we have them. And I believe that like you can't just hold them in. If there's a time to cry, there's a time to laugh, there's all these moments. But it truly is a gift to exist, and I remind myself that every day, that it's a privilege to be here right now. And I want to carry that conversation. I want people to know, I want the listeners to know that like it's a gift to be here, and we don't know, our days are numbered. I mean, that's one thing that we're all guaranteed in this life, is like we're all going to pass at some point. And so that's why each day you have to look at as a gift. And I get it, when you're in a dark moments in your life, or you're really struggling with something really bad, and maybe work's not going well, maybe things with your children aren't going well, or with your spouse, like you have to remind yourself about that life is a gift. and you have to be grateful for it. And that's why you have to practice that gratitude. And I really started, and I'd practiced gratitude, but I really had to start practicing that gratitude again and just be so grateful for the 20 years that I got with Erin, and just what a privilege it was to be with her for those 20 years. Sure, you'd love to have 40, 50, 60 years to potentially together, but we're not guaranteed that. And that's why each day has to be the gift. And today is the gift. We're still here. Those that are still breathing, that are listening to this podcast, Winnie and I are speaking right now. Like, it's a gift.
Yeah.
And I want people to be reminded of that. And I get it's hard. It's really, really hard. Life is hard. But once you start really practicing that gratitude and really understanding what life truly is, then that's when the blessings come about. And that's when you feel like I felt like I could really move forward, is when I truly understand that life truly is a gift.
I love that. And I want to take us into something that you carry in your pocket. There's a moment in your book where you talk about carrying something with you very close. And I know what that is, but I'd love for you to share it in your words.
Yeah.
What do you carry in your pocket, and what does it mean to you on the days when grief feels heavy? Speak to the listener who's also carrying something, maybe a photo, a ring, a voicemail, an object, because it keeps this person close.
Yeah. I mean, I've always got Erin in my heart, but I do, especially on my trail runs and races, and I carry her obituary card. And a lot of times it's just a reminder that I'll tap on it or I'll pull it out. And it's just always a reminder of who I am and who she was. And then I know she still has my back,
She's with you.
and she helps carry me forward. And especially as we can talk about in these, I've done these long, ultra runs, and especially the first this first one, this 200-mile race I did this year, I was carrying it with me, and I remember I pulled it out at the end of the race, and I just put it on my chest, and
Mm.
it was just a reminder that she was the one that got me through, because I never felt like I wanted to quit. Even when it got hard, I ended up, I was struggling. I got what they call the Tahoe lung, where I couldn't breathe and I got all this congestion going on. But it was never this moment I wanted to quit. And I also talk about this moment when I did my first 100-mile race last year, where I was I hadn't thrown up in probably 8 years of my life. I'd never thrown up on a run, and
Oh gosh.
I started vomiting, and
God.
I left. And I talk about this in the book, and
Yes.
immediately left the aid station because I'm like, I got to get out of here. I got to get this thing done. And I remember I was climbing up, and it was so hard, and I couldn't
Uh,
breathe. I was climbing up, but she was reminding me that we do hard things. We get through hard things, and so the card is just a reminder. I'm not a big, I don't have a lot of collectibles and things like that. And, a lot of the things I had of hers, I donated, because I knew that's what she would want. She was big on donating her clothes and things like that. So I either gave them to my nieces and my sister-in-law and some other people, and donated the rest to the theater she was involved in. And, but that's one thing I carry of hers, and I have a few other things, but that's the thing that I carry. Well, not necessarily her, but just my reminder of her when things get tough. And I just look at that. I look at her face and her smiling face, and know that it's going to be okay.
I love that your runs became this conversation with Erin. Um, Speak to the person who needs a place to put their grief right now.
Yeah. Yeah, for me, I was always a runner. Well, I shouldn't say I was always a runner. I really, until I got in my 40s, that's when I started taking running serious. And it was like, thankfully I had that. And I think everybody, if it's not running for you, then maybe it's something else. But I think everybody needs that something to, like, you have to get back to like a new, what I call the new normal. And that new normal, like maybe something that exists that you had before, but it's in a new light, and it's a new way. And so for me, I was more of a road runner, and so trails, and I started trail running a little bit before Aaron's passing, but not much. And so the trails became my grieving place, the place where I could go and talk to her and cry, and speak to her, or just even sometimes even just go on hikes. I would talk to her, and just let it out. And times I would there was times I was a little angry, and not at her, but just at the situation, and that was my place, is using running to learn to move forward again, to find that new normal, and to go back to something that was normal for me, to make it my new, my new normal, incorporated in my life. And I think everybody needs that. And maybe it is something brand new. Maybe it isn't running. Maybe it's cycling. Maybe it's knitting. Like, I don't know. Whoever the listener is, maybe it's starting something new. Maybe it could be several things. But I think you have to find something that can carry you forward, and maybe give you a new identity. For me, it was just like, my identity was her and I, and now it's just me. And so now I've, taken what I was passionate about, and taken it to a whole nother level, so to speak. So yeah, I think it's finding what that thing is, and using that as a way to grieve. Because yeah, sitting around and all that, like, it's not healthy. You have to move, and I think movement is probably a good thing. And so yeah, like, so maybe running's not your thing, maybe it's just walking. Maybe it's walking to a 5K or whatever it might be. I'm always a big fan of the exercise component, because I believe that really helps with the endorphins and dopamine and all those different things that are very, very healthy, as you and I both know. But if
Well,
you're listening, maybe he's not quite that type of person, maybe that's what that new thing could be.
you reference a study on page 65 showing that movement gives the grieving mind freedom, connection, and emotional release. And physical movement is a healing force no matter what. I love that you included that in your life and that's been part of your healing journey and continues to be. I want to move into when joy feels like betrayal, because you wrote that early on, any moment of joy felt like a betrayal to you. Talk to a listener who may be feeling what their small moments of light. It's scared for them to move on.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, it's scary. Because you feel like, how can I be happy again? How can I, like, this joy, like, you feel like you're betraying the person you lost or something like that. And it's like, well, one, that person feels that pain no more. I mean, they're not here in the physical sense. Where you believe they are beyond that, I believe Erin's in a better place, and I believe all those things personally. But for the person that maybe not think that or understand that, maybe not in this moment, or how can I be happy again? Again, I think it goes back to, like, I believe that person would want you to be happy, and maybe things didn't end well. It's one thing I am grateful, things that we did have a healthy relationship, but maybe you didn't. And I want to tell the listener that, like, that's okay. Like, you're going to have to eventually come to a place where you're going to have to forgive yourself. And that forgiveness is going to have to eventually translate to that it's not betrayal, that it's not, like, it's okay. Like, you have to move forward, and that joy is not going to betray them or dishonor them or anything like that. Again, they would want you, I truly believe they would want you to be happy again. They would want you to carry on with life, and they wouldn't want you to be in this perpetual moment, or a time of just staying in that spot that whole time and never moving forward. Like, because it's not, I don't believe it's healthy. I don't believe that it's going to help you move forward and get you through this. And unfortunately, I have met people that still are in that place. And I hope people that, if you feel like you're in that place, that, like, you can take the steps to move forward off of that moment, and understand that, like, that joy is, it's okay. Like, it's okay to be happy. It's okay to smile again. You're gonna, and maybe pain's gonna come back, and maybe those dark moments might come back, but know that, like, you can find that joy again. And it does take time. But it's like, each day you just have to take it on as it is. And some days are painful and hard, and there's days where the joy's good, and life feels really good, and you feel like you're perpetually moving forward. And that's good. Honor that. That's what you want. That's growth.
Well, something I loved in your book is how grief created these unexpected connections, strangers on the trail sharing their stories. You described these encounters, I think it was between pages 53 and 63 in my notes, that really became surprising companionships where grief became this bridge between people. What did those moments teach you about humanity and now about healing?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a connection. I mean, I think we all have it. I mean, we all lose somebody we really love at some point in our life. I mean, I hadn't. I lost. My grandparents. Probably, gosh, almost 25 years ago now, and that was probably the last time I got really emotional. About losing somebody, and and then when I lost Aaron, that was a whole different level because again, it's one of those unexpected. It's comes out of nowhere, and you know I just realized that in that moment, I had to figure out like, yeah, like I think I had to know that like, yeah, it's gonna be okay. Like like this isn't going to hurt forever, and that I can figure out how to navigate this, and that I'm not alone, and that I can lean on other people. But especially the people out on the trails, it was like they're going through something too. And I think when I opened up, it honored them to open up. And I think for a lot of people, it is hard to open up about it, and I want to be that person to say that it's okay to open up. It's okay to share. And maybe you don't want to share. That's okay too. But I feel like for me, opening up and sharing, leading with that, like it was good, and it's okay because I want to start opening up this conversation that let's have this open, honest conversation about grief, and yes, it is hard. It's messy. It's painful. It's all these things, but like we have to be okay talking about it. And again, try to get away from what I call the toxic positivity, that like, like, yeah, you're not going to just get over it. Like, you're not just going to move on. Then you'll find somebody new or something like that. Like, that's not what we want to hear. And then sometimes it's better to not say anything and just listen, just listen to that person and just be there for that person. And I ran into that a lot too. People would just listen, but I noticed the biggest thing I understood about humanity is that people were willing to open up and share once I opened up and share. And sometimes you just have to open that door. And if I'm that person, just like with us, that book, then great. I'll be that person.
And I love that because you never know what the unexpected connection could be, which moves me into my next section of talking about moving forward and asking you, when did you realize the goal wasn't to move on, but to actually move forward and carrying Erin with you into the life you're still
Yeah,
living right now? Because I want you to speak to the listener who feels stuck, who doesn't know what forward even means.
it's a great question. I think I knew it pretty early on, probably 3 or 4 months, but again, it probably went back to that conversation. I probably, was just, sharing with Eric, who I mentioned earlier about writing this book. And that was the word that he keened on. Like you keep saying this moving forward. And I think that's when I decided, okay, this is my mantra, these are the words that I'm going to speak and build on is about moving forward. And yeah, I think, for the person like that it's hard to even think about that right now, that's okay. Like you don't have to be there right now. Like you don't have to be ready for that. But at some point you will. And there's a point where you're going to have to decide what you want and how you want to move forward with this thing. There's going to be a moment. And again, it's could be weeks, could be months, could be years, hopefully not too many years, because again, then I feel like maybe you're not dealing with the grief. And I think people have to, and I get there's a lot of people that want to bottle it up and keep it to themselves and don't want to talk about it, and I get all that. But that's where grief counselors are great, and I talk about my grief counselor, or find somebody that you can just share and open up with, and don't worry about how messy it is. Don't just like I've got very emotional in this conversation. Don't worry about all that. Like it doesn't matter. All that is your body releasing something, your body releasing that emotion. And that's how you learn to move forward, is releasing those emotions. And sometimes it is crying, sometimes it is laughter, and that's those little steps. And so I just want the listener to understand that it's okay to move forward. It really, really is. Again, that you're honoring that person, and you're honoring yourself, and you're not helping yourself any more if you're not learning to move forward.
I love that. And one of the things I wrote was a quote by Mary Frances O'Connor around, I think it was page 35 or 40. She writes that with support, we adapt. And I love that. And if you're out there and you thinking that you cannot move forward, you can. And, because I think that's like, oh my gosh, I'm the exception. Speak to the listener who may be thinking I'm the exception. No, I can't move forward.
Yeah, well, I'm right here. uh, I've been there, and so like I get it, and just it makes me think about like every day there's a family that's going through this.
Yeah,
There's I believe it's 30 to 40,000 fatalities a year, car fatalities just in the United States alone, somewhere in there, and every day somebody, and that's just accidents. There obviously there's other way that people pass or suddenly pass and things like that, and so just that's the part, like that's where you're not alone, but you're gonna feel that. I understand, like when you're in bed, like I don't have kids. I have my family. My mom. My brother, and other family and friends, and you have to start leaning on them as well, and knowing that it's okay to open up with them as well, and share those moments. And sometimes with family it's even harder, I guess. Sometimes you're willing to open up more with like friends, because I think there's a lot of bonds between you and your family, and sometimes you don't want to show the pain to them, because then they feel, you
100%.
don't want to make them feel bad, but that's okay. Like it's not about making them feel bad or not making them feel bad. It's just part of it. And but just know that like you're not alone in this, and that I always tell people like I'm a resource. I reach out to people now, and I'll send my condolences, but sometimes it's just allowing them to share with you. And again, I'm not here to try to fix anybody or try to tell you. One of the things I learned early on too, that I was thinking about is like, you don't, everybody grieves differently, and never let anybody tell you how to grieve. Don't let anybody ever tell you to like, just again, premise of this book, to just get over it. Like, don't let anybody do that to you. And if they are, then again, either tell them to stop or get away from them, or whatever it takes, because and let them know, be real with them, like you're not helping me in this moment. I need This is what I need you for, and I think it's okay for you to tell people what you need from them. um, because yes, it's grief is messy, like I said before, and it's painful. But again, just know that like even when you in your darkest moment, you're not alone. Look for the light, look for the silver linings as much as you can. Reflect on the beautiful moments you had with that person, because I know there had to have been at least some, even if it was rocky or not good. Lean into those moments, and don't have regret. That's one thing that I learned early on too, is not to have regret with any of this, because regret doesn't solve anything. You can't change the situation, you can't change the past, you can't change that moment. Like you can't change yesterday. You can only change today, and so the sooner you can learn to change today and to move forward with it and learn to live with it, the quicker I think that you'll get to those moments of clarity, and understand your purpose and what your new normal is going to be.
I love that. Josh, you talk about supporting others who are going through grief. Can you give us some suggestions, advice for the person that's listening who's maybe not going through it themselves, but they have a friend, a family member, someone they know? How can they best support someone?
Yeah, that's great. And I kind of go back to that conversation I had with my friend Jonathan, who he wasn't my grief counselor, but he is a grief counselor. He just sat with them. Just like if it's somebody that's grieving, but maybe you're the friend that needs to go be there for them, just go there. Even if you just sit there in awkward silence, who cares? Just say, "Hey, I'm here for you." You don't need to talk about it. You don't need to try to pry. Don't ever try to pry it out of them. Like just tell them, "Hey, I'm here for you. Whatever you need. Like I'm. If you just want to talk, if you don't want to talk, maybe you just come over and watch a movie, or maybe you just go on a walk together, or like try to get them to at least do something, some movement, something like make suggestions like that when they feel ready. But like, yeah, don't ever try to fix them. Don't ever try to make suggestions on how to grieve, or maybe you can share like similar stories, but I try to even be careful not to even try to compare. Like, oh, I know what you're feeling, and I've honestly I've done that too, and it's hard not to do that, or I can relate or something like that. Because again, in that moment when it's raw and real, like it's just that doesn't it doesn't solve anything in that moment. It's not what they're feeling, or it's not about solving anything right in those moments. It's about just being and being there with them in those moments. So if you're the friend, the family member, just be with them. You don't have to try to feel like you have to go there to solve anything, or like I'm going to get them to open up, or I'm going to get them to do this. Like you don't have to worry about doing any of that.
I love that. Reminds me when my stepmom passed with my dad, and we immediately just drove down to just be with him.
Yeah.
There's nothing we could do but just to be around him in a big empty house, to cook some meals, to hang out, to sit and cry and just hang. There was really no other goal but just to be
Yeah.
together, to
Just
give
be
him
together.
someone that where he just wasn't by himself, you know?
Yeah, yeah, and that's important. And I had family, around me, and let them be around. But yeah, if you're the other family member that's the supporting, like, yeah, just go be with them. Bring them a meal, bring them something they like, and that's part of the healing process. And that early pain is just it's like any wound. And that's how I feel about grief. It's just a scar. That's a reminder that I'll always have, and that's okay. Those first moments when if you've ever broken anything or gone through something traumatic, like it's it's a different pain, but it's a similar type of pain.
I love that, Josh. I want to switch gears because I want to talk about where you're at today and the
Yeah,
lessons you are learning on your journey in this new chapter of your life. Where are you going? What are you doing? Share with our listeners now of
yeah,
where Josh Coleman is today.
yeah. I'm like all over the place. So we had a house in Florida that we had only been in about 6 months. I stayed in it for another year and a half, and then during that time I bought an RV van, and I decided that I'm going to take my show on the road. and
That's
and
great.
what that means is like I'm going to go rediscover myself. And so I took the van out west and started exploring Montana, and that's when I got involved in ultra running. I actually did my first ultra race back in Florida, but all the ones since I've done out west, and I started getting really involved in the trail running community and ultras, and done races from Washington to California to Arizona, to Colorado, and feel like kind of everywhere in between. And I love the mountains. The mountains have kind of been the place for me to really process, and kind of realize that I was more of a mountain guy than a beach guy. And so I've been just exploring around in my RV van that I live out of full time now, and that's what I'm doing these days. And now we're in the off season, and so I'm getting prepared for the 2026 race season. And so just training mode now, and trying to find as many mountains and trails as I can find.
I love that, Josh. I love it. You have taken us through so many layers of this journey, the pain, the memories, the small steps forward, and the moments of really unexpected connection. Before I ask this last question, I want to slow the pace one more time. For those who are listening, this next part is for you. So, wherever you are, just take a moment to let your shoulders drop and be calm. Know that you're going to be okay. And I want us to walk into this final question together because for the listener who's maybe in their first month of grief, who cannot breathe, who cannot imagine tomorrow, what do you want them to hear, Josh?
Yeah, I think again, you have to lean into it. You have to lean into the pain. And again, those first months are raw, but each day, like, you're talking about breath. And I think for me, it was a lot of breath work, and just make sure you're not just sitting still. Make sure you are, getting outside, getting sunshine. I can remember those first especially at that time I was in Florida. And if you're not somewhere where it's not sunny, look for the sunny days, but remind yourself of the sunny days. But I think even if it's cold and gloomy out, I think getting outside. But that's one thing I was grateful for, is I had the sunshine. That vitamin D is a great healer. Don't bottle yourself up. And yeah, it's raw, it hurts, and that's okay. It's okay that it hurts. That pain is normal. That's your body reacting to what to that loss. And but know that healing is coming. Healing is That's part of the healing, is that pain. And it will stop stinging. um and Just breathe it in as much as you can, and then even when it hurts, and just again take it moment by moment, day by day, step by step, wherever it's at. And sometimes it is just moment by moment. You're not even thinking about the next day or where you're going to be at tomorrow or a year from now. Don't even worry about that. Just take it in moment by moment, day by day, breath by breath.
I love that, Josh. Thank you for sharing your heart and Erin's presence with us today.
Absolutely.
Please tell us where people can learn more about your book,
Yeah.
where they can find you, where they connect with you. Maybe they want to run a trail with you. give us
Yeah.
give us the scoop.
Sure. Yeah. So I don't have an exact date on when the book will release, but I would say it should be able to be ordered on Amazon. I'm hoping I just got the EPUB files. I believe I should be getting them today or this week. And so then I've got to get them uploaded. So it'll be on Amazon. But the best way to follow me right now is probably my Instagram. And I'm sure Wendy will probably put this out somewhere, but it's
Yep.
just Josh Run Adventures, Josh Run Adventures on my Instagram, and that's where I'll be publishing, or that's where I'll be, talking about the book, and I'll have eventually links to where you can order the book and things like that. So that's the best way for
Perfect.
the book, and then for me, yeah, I've got 5 races coming up next year. I'm also running
Amazing.
5 200-mile races.
Oh my God.
I'm also going back to my roots. I will be running the Boston Marathon in April. So April
Awesome.
20th. So I requalified for that last year. So I always want to go back and do that race again. And then I'll be doing hopefully Cocodona. I'm on the wait list. Hopefully I'll get off of that one. That's in May. Then I'll be doing um, let's see, after that'll be Tahoe 200 in Lake Tahoe. That'll be in June. And then I'll be doing the Bigfoot 200. That will be in Washington. And then hopefully, whenever the signups come out, I'm planning on doing the Mammoth 200. That'll be in September. And then I'll cap it off with the Moab 240. So I'm doing 5 200-mile
Again.
races next year. I
That's
did 3
crazy.
this year. I'm taking it to a whole nother level because I'm crazy and I love it. I love the distance. It's such a wild distance. And yeah, you can follow me on Josh Run Adventures. That's usually I'm traveling right now. I'm in the Midwest, but I'll be back in Arizona training the first part of December, and then most of January, February, March I'll be in Arizona training. So that's kind of where I'll be at. And I might throw in another race somewhere. I don't know yet, maybe a smaller one, but yeah, that's where I'm at right now.
All right, my friends, you heard it from Josh Coleman. That's where you can find him. Reach out to him and get that book.
Yes.
I cannot wait to have it in my hands. I'm going to be holding it so close and dear to me. It's just such a fantastic reminder to whoever you are with, embrace the moment, be in the day, be in the present. Oh, Josh, thank you so much for being
Thank
here
you,
and sharing this
Wendy.
time with
I
me.
appreciate you. Thank you so much.
And to you listening, if this conversation gave you even a moment of clarity, comfort, breath, let that be enough for now. If you want more tools, reflections, and behind the scenes insights into what I'm learning on my own journey, you can join my weekly drop. The link is in the show notes below. And if today's episode lit something in you, please share it with someone who needs it, especially if they're going through a hard time. Subscribe on Apple Podcast, Spotify, or YouTube, and let's keep walking this road together, my friend. Keep pushing boundaries, keep chasing big dreams, and most importantly, keep chasing those horizons. Aloha.